Hello and welcome back to the Listening Well podcast. My name is Jenna.
I'm Brittany.
And today we are talking about anxiety.
Yes! I'm so excited. This is just, man, I feel like it's the elephant in the room.
It really is.
Nobody gonna talk about it.
No.
But it's there. It's so there.
And it's more prevalent than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the last episode, we talked about depression, but we also just talked about mental health in general and like all of the stats behind mental health. And one of the big things that we talked about was just kind of like the prevalence of it. 6.5 million adults in the US, 1 in 5 adults. And then the average age is 14 and a half years old. And anxiety in itself is 5 years old. 5.5 years old is the average onset of anxiety.
Yeah.
According to research.
We are that stat in our house. Like Nora started her anxiety, I would say it was around 5, almost to the day. I still remember having to walk through that with her, and it's gotten better as we've learned to manage and cope and find helpful tools and things. Part of it was just naming it for what it was so that we could begin to tackle it. But yeah, it's real.
Okay, so we're gonna get into it.
Let's do it.
Anxiety disorders involve strong feelings of fear and worry that lead to changes in behavior. Like I said in the last episode, mental illnesses and mental health, they are two different things, but they coincide together. So mental health is your umbrella of your same thing as like your physical health. It's mental health, and then mental illness would be the same thing as if you had a physical illness. So that's just kind of how we can define them to make them a little more easier to understand. And so anxiety disorders is a mental illness. And so it's normal to feel anxious or nervous in certain situations, like if you're taking a test or you have a big project or meeting that you're doing a presentation in for work. And that normal anxiety is also helpful because of the fact that it alerts you to dangerous situations and help you focus on attention and feel safe, and stay safe. So we'll do a very, very quick overview of your sympathetic nervous system. In your body, you have your autonomic nervous system, okay? This is where it's automatic. So autonomic means automatic. You don't have to think about it. And so your sympathetic nervous system is part of your autonomic nervous system. And that would include like your organs and your breathing and your heart rate. Like those are the things that you don't have to think about. And then you also have your parasympathetic. These two things coexist, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. It's like a on-off switch, okay? So when it's on, it's your sympathetic nervous system. When it's off, it's your parasympathetic nervous system, okay? Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. Your heart rate's going to increase. Your respiratory rate is going to increase. That's your breathing rate, sorry. And your blood pressure is going to increase. And your eyes will dilate. These are all things that are meant to help prepare you to fight. And so,
or run.
Yes, or run. So it's like in the case of a bear attack, that's what is happening is your body's like, oh, there's a bear. I need to run. Like I need to do something because otherwise, like I need to keep myself safe. Whereas your parasympathetic system is your rest and digest. And so this is the area in which your breath rate will slow down. Your heart rate will slow down. Your eyes will not dilate, but
return
to normal. And this also allows for your internal organs to go back to functioning properly. So like when you have your sympathetic nervous system, it will cause your organs to actually not work properly, or like be able to activate how it's supposed to, because of the fact that all of this blood, instead of going towards those organs, is going towards your brain. And so in the other realm of it, like I said, it's your rest and digest, because of the fact that it allows your digestive system to be able to digest your food and all of those other things that's necessary, because if you don't have your digestive system, then you're not getting the nutrients that you need to survive.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people that experience anxiety, a common symptom is digestive issues.
Yes.
Very much so. Yeah. And they'll be treated for digestive issues when really it's an anxiety issue and not a digestive issue. And so finding the source of what's causing the digestive issue can be so important. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist of your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. And so the point of that entire explanation was that in very many cases, your anxiety is triggering your sympathetic nervous system. And I need to get it up here because I don't want to botch it. So your sympathetic nervous system is activated by certain elements within your brain, according to like neurotransmitters, which neurotransmitters are your like electrical signals within your brain, and it's in your brain, and like your neurons. So the neurotransmitters are like the little guys who are activating your neurons. Okay, I'm trying to explain it in like simple terms. And so your sympathetic nervous system is activated by when your body is triggered by fear, or in regards to like your amygdala and your limbic system and all of those different elements. When those get triggered by different things, that's when your sympathetic nervous system is activated. Okay?
Yep.
I think that's the best way of explaining it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, other than I just was thinking about Nora, our daughter, when she was experiencing really, really horrible separation anxiety when she started preschool, and she was 5 and we had just moved, and it made sense. But we had taught her up to that point, we didn't realize the effect it would have, but we had taught her that if you get frustrated or upset with something, just walk away, take a time out, recollect yourself, and then join back in. All right. She's very sensitive and she can get upset very easily. And so we were like, listen, we're not going to have meltdowns at the table every time. Like, go take a minute, collect yourself, calm down, and then we'll have a conversation. We'll move on throughout our day. Well, in doing that, we had trained her essentially that when things are hard, or when I'm scared, when I'm upset, that I need to flee from the situation. So when we started preschool and she was having horrible separation anxiety, horrible, her go-to was flee. Mom, Dad, you taught me that when things are hard, or when I need to calm down, to remove myself from the situation and collect myself. And she was going to her safe people because she was experiencing such fear. And that's a common, separation anxiety is very common in children, young children especially. I thought we were through that stage, but man, so once I actually went to a counseling session, and before I went to the session though, I got to a point, I had done some research, and the research had said that it's when kids can when they can name it, like feel it, name it, tame it, that phrase, feel it, name it, tame it, that it can be very helpful in beginning the process of being able to cope. And so one morning before school started, she was having her meltdown because she didn't want to leave the house, because she didn't want to go to school, because she didn't want to be separated from us. And I sat on the couch and I said, Nora, you know what you're feeling right now, like the butterflies in your belly that you feel, and just that icky feeling that you get, and that feeling of being scared. And she said, yeah. I said, that's called anxiety. What? Yeah, that's called anxiety. What's anxiety? Well, it's a lot like what you're feeling. And mom has anxiety too. And then she interrupted. She said, you do? And I said, yeah, I do. And I've had to get help for my anxiety, and it's been really helpful. And so we're going to try some things just to help your anxiety. And she got really excited about it. And it didn't turn into anything. It's not like she blew it up and went to school saying, I have anxiety. Like, it didn't turn into that. But she was able to, in other situations, then be able, when she felt those similar feelings, Mom, I think I have anxiety. This new school year, starting kindergarten, she was so excited. But when we asked her, like the day or two before school started, Nora, are you excited? You getting ready for kindergarten? She said, yeah, but I'm nervous. I'm like, that's great. Like, not great that you're nervous, but that's great that you were able to recognize that. And it's okay to be nervous. It doesn't mean, the world falls apart. It doesn't mean X, Y, Z. But we were able to, through a lot of breath practices, we have a book called Breathe Like a Bear. And it's all these different exercises to, you might like pretend like you're holding a flower and take a big breath in. And then slowly blow the petals off of that flower. Or her favorite, the hot chocolate breath. Hold a cup of hot chocolate in your hand and take a breath in like you're smelling the chocolate. Then it smells so good. And then breathe on it to cool it down. And those are the types of things we were doing at home to be able to calm her down. And I will say, over the span of probably 3 or 4 months, she was able to begin self-regulating. And that doesn't mean that we still don't experience anxiety in our house. We do, but she's got tools that we can fall back on when she does experience those things. So yeah, just thinking of those stories and just seeing the autonomic nervous system play out in real time in your child, is crazy. And in the moment, like, there's no reasoning with them. You can't reason. Go ahead.
Nope. So literally, so one of the things is that, like, you have your, like, this will be in the toolkit because I don't want to botch it like really much, but like you can compare your brain to a upstairs and a downstairs, a 2-story house. Let me find it so that way I don't botch it.
This is also, parents, if you're listening, there's a book called The Whole Brain Child, and it has this illustration in it. It's a phenomenal book. Anybody that works with kids needs to read this book. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So you have your upstairs characters, which are your thinkers, your problem solvers, and that area is known for being flexible, creative, and empathetic. And so you can create these characters and name them like calming Carl, problem solving Pete, creative Craig, and flexible Felix. And so that upstairs characters, that would be considered your prefrontal cortex or your executive functioning, your problem solving areas, okay? Whereas your downstairs characters are the feelers, focused on survival, safety, and responding to threats. They can be called alerting Allie, frightened Fred, and big boss Bootsy. And this is your brainstem thinking, your survival thinking. There's a conscious, it's a certain type of way of looking at how your brain communicates. And it simplifies it into these 3 overarching explanations of the different areas. I want to find it because, again, I don't want to botch it. Conscious discipline brain state model. This was created by a psychiatrist. And so she explains it. Again, this is in the toolkit. So I'm not going to go into it because I don't feel prepared for that. what was I saying?
Upstairs, downstairs.
Upstairs, downstairs. I feel so out of it right now.
You're good. We're both like fighting crud, so if you hear us sniffling and like that, it's why we're on the struggle bus, but it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, so the upstairs and downstairs, it's important for them to communicate with each other to be able to function typically. Okay, so the stairs that connect between the downstairs and the upstairs, those are how the characters carry messages up and down to each other, helping you make good choices. Okay, but sometimes the downstairs brain, or alerting Allie, spots danger, frightened Fred panics, and then Big Boss Buttsy sounds the alarm, telling your body to prepare for danger. So in doing that, then Big Boss Buttsy shouts the downstairs brain is taking over, and flips the lid on the upstairs brain. This means that the stairs that normally allow the upstairs and downstairs to work together are no longer connected. So literally, like, here's your downstairs, here's your upstairs. They flip the lid and they say, all right, we need to have only our survival people, only the things that will help us survive. And so that causes this inability to communicate appropriately. This just provides another way of explaining these emotions to a kid. But then also it's like, if you have a child experiencing kind of like a meltdown, you can say like, hey, I think you flipped your lid. And then you can have a conversation about it or anything like that. Like, it just provides like you said, like
some vocabulary.
Yes,
vernacular.
some vocabulary.
Yeah, and I would even say, like, I learned with Nora, like, once her lid was flipped and there was no communication, I had to get her back into a regulated state before I could calmly converse with her, because there was no reasoning. Her ability to reason and think clearly was not there. And it makes sense when you think about your own self when you're experiencing fear, high levels of fear or anxiety. You're not in a position to have a calm, collective conversation with somebody. You're experiencing all the rush of symptoms and things. You're thinking about that thing that's making you anxious, and you're not online. You're not able to reason effectively. And so finding ways to help regulate and bring that lid down to help the upstairs and downstairs communicate again is so important. And then you're able to address some tools and some conversations and things that will hopefully be helpful for future, whether it's meltdowns or seasons or periods of anxiety or things like that.
And like, this also plays a huge role for kids who have like sensory processing difficulties and things like that, because the same areas that are affected by anxiety are the same areas that are either not as active or overactive for kids who have sensory processing difficulties or experiencing meltdowns more quickly because they're overwhelmed. And that's why the importance of having these different strategies that work for them. And that's the thing, it's like each kid is different. One thing that works for one kid might not work for the next one. So it's definitely like a give and take, problem solving. You're constantly trying to figure out what works best for each kid.
Yeah.
So,
is there hope, Jenna?
I would say so, because I'm here.
Hallelujah. Same.
So in my own experiences with anxiety, when I got to college, I mean, like throughout my childhood, now that like I understand that I have anxiety, and I recognize now that there was so many times throughout my childhood that I realized like, oh, that's what that was. That's why I was an emotional wreck, or that's why I couldn't control how I was feeling, or that's why I had this meltdown type thing. So in college, I was having panic attacks at least 3 times a week, and it was debilitating to the point where I couldn't go to classes. I was really struggling. And so I went to my parents and I let them know what was happening, and that's when I started kind of getting all of the different things, different resources that are available out there. So talking with someone like a psychologist or a therapist. And then I also spoke with my doctor, and we talked about the different areas and ways that we could work to help regulate my symptoms, to then be able to focus on how to get to the actual like cause of where all of my anxiety was coming from, which that happens through a wide range of resources that you can use, because it's not just one thing that's going to fix all of it.
Right.
And if you have anxiety, it's something that you're going to have most likely for the rest of your life. It's not something that you can just cure either, which from my own experience stinks.
But there are hopeful ways that you can become resilient and build resiliency so that anxiety doesn't control your life and it becomes debilitating. But God gives us resources and ways to cope, to be able to build resiliency so we can live through our anxiety, meaning we still might have anxiety, but it no longer controls us to the point we can't function. We're building that resiliency. I look at it, I know they're very different, but we talked about this in the podcast on grief. It's not just, hey, you lose this person that you love and you do XYZ, now you're all better. It's you're going to experience this feeling of loss probably your whole life, but as you learn to grieve well, it no longer becomes debilitating, but you're able to live through it and live with it in healthy ways, that it doesn't consume you in negative ways. So, yeah.
And so a couple resources that we have, both of them kind of coexist together in the aspect of like resiliency and changing the way that your brain thinks. And so there's this term called neuroplasticity.
Yes.
So there's this term called neuroplasticity. What that means is that your brain is not set in stone. It is a plastic. Now, for children, this plastic is more like a Play-Doh. It's more easily altered, more easy to change, whereas as you get older, this plastic is more rigid and hard, and it takes time and effort to be able to change the thinking and ways that your brain works. So when your brain communicates with itself, the connections that you make constantly, so for example, I played softball. Okay, I'm going to use a sport reference for this. So when you're trying to learn a new skill, you're practicing it over and over and over and over again to be able to build that body memory. Yes, muscle memory. But when you stop using it, like for example, I stopped playing piano, you lose it. And that's the same concept with neuroplasticity, is that as you continue to make these thoughts or assumptions or anything like that, that's where your brain, the neurons will grow, those pathways will grow because of the fact they're used more. Whereas if they're not used more, they will lessen. They won't be as strong.
Neurons that fire together, wire together.
I love that.
Yeah. I can't tell you whose credit that is, but I did not come up with that myself.
Okay, so a couple neuroplasticity resources that I had gotten from my own therapist was the I cannot control versus I can control. And so like we have these resources, by the way, Brittany has them. And so like this one is completed, but there's ones that aren't completed, so that way you can do them yourself. And so on the outside, you put things that you can't control because they're not in your realm of ability to control. I use the example of a house. So there's this neighborhood dilemma And pretty much that means that like you control what's in your house, in your yard, in your fenced in area, whereas you cannot control what happens in your neighbor's yard and things like that. So things that like you can't control is what other people think, what other people do, the past, if people like you or dislike you, things like that. And then you put in things that you can control, which is like my attitude, how I express myself, the way I do things like that. And so this is just a good way for when it's like you're really struggling with social anxiety or things like that. It's like, okay, like I cannot control this, and this, but I can control this. Like it's just a good way of trying to rewire your brain so that way you can be more resilient. And then this other one is called growth mindset. So you have these differences. You have a fixed mindset and you have a growth mindset. And so a fixed mindset is like this idea of you're in a solid, very much like rock hard fixed mindset, and that is negative. And then a growth mindset is more of that working towards creating more positive ways of thinking. So a fixed mindset idea is this is the best that I can do, whereas a growth mindset is I can keep trying. A fixed mindset would be I've failed. A growth mindset would be I'm not going to give up. A fixed mindset would be I can't do anything. A growth mindset is I can do hard things. So again, these are just more resources. Brittany will have them. They'll be in the toolkit. So
yeah, I love so real time, like real life example that literally just happened yesterday. Talking with a girl on the phone, and she is, before she goes to bed at night, she's having really negative thoughts that are recurring, and it's right before she goes to bed when like her mind begins to wander or dwell, I would say. And they're really negative things, things that are from her past, things that she feels guilty for, things that that she wishes she could change, but she can't, those types of things. And she just continues to think them. So I asked her, do you have these thoughts frequently? And she said, yes, daily, like every day. I'm like, okay. So neuroplasticity in real time, I talked to her about the neurons that fire together, wire together, and that there's good news because our brains are moldable. And I love, in the Christian world, in the biblical world, I just think of like the potter's hand, us being the clay, and the potter is molding us. And God designed our brains that way, even as we grow into adulthood. It is harder, but we can do hard things, and it takes practice, and a lot of the work's going to be hard, but you can do it. And so I talked to her about, let's replace those negative thoughts with truth, with God's truth. She's a Christian, and so we're getting out Bible verses, truth that says I am loved. God says I am loved. He loves me. Bible verses that say I am his masterpiece. Bible verses that say I am forgiven and made new. Bible verses that say I don't have to live in shame anymore because of Christ. You go down the list, and I had her not just say these things, but I told her to write them down, because there's a process that happens in our brains when we transfer them into writing. So it moves from just this ambiguous thought up here and more into a concrete state when we actually write it down. And so I told her, I want you to write these truths down every single day, because we need to create new pathways. Like we need to create, and eventually these are things that over time, the old circuit, the old pathways it's gonna be like a roadblock. And it's going to be a new detour of these positive thoughts that aren't, I would say they're more than positive thoughts. They are truth, that her brain is literally going to be rewiring itself if she's willing to put in the work and do it on repeat exercises and processes. But that's what you talked about was one of my go-tos with people with anxiety or negative thought patterns or intrusive thoughts or things that might be causing their anxiety is let's change your thought pattern. Like Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So let's do that. Like with the Lord's help and with the tools that he gives us, with scripture, with the brain's ability to rewire itself, let's do it. And so it's just really incredible. Again, just how we're designed, and we're not hopeless. We don't have to remain stuck in this cycle. And honestly, our bodies, the energy it takes for our bodies to remain in a chronic anxious state,
It's not good.
it's not good. You probably have stats, but the stress it takes on our bodies because of the energy required. You think about being in a fight or flight state constantly. That's using energy in our body that we were not meant to, just in short bursts, right? To run from the bear, but we weren't designed to stay there. And because it takes so much energy and depletes us, it can have lasting long-term effects physiologically on our bodies as well.
So, for example, when you are stuck in this fight or flight mode, these factors contribute to inflammation, increased inflammation, which can cause irreversible damage to both the brain and other organs. So in a couple studies, they found that chronic high levels of cortisol can reduce the size of the hippocampus, and your hippocampus is in charge of like memory formation. And so that can impair your memory and concentration when you are stuck in this fight or flight. So for example, like for kids who have childhood trauma, a lot of the times like they're stuck in this fight or flight, and then that's why when they get older they have difficulties with memory. And then yeah, I'm trying to see if I have anything else. A nervous system stuck in fight or flight can manifest through various physical and psychological changes. So things like high blood pressure, rapid heart rate, elevated cortisol levels, heightened alertness to surroundings, muscle tension, headaches, digestive issues, brain fog, chronic fatigue, trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, and just like those persistent feelings of being overwhelmed or on edge.
Yeah. That's when I know my anxiety's got the best of me, when I live life on edge, and I'm edgy, I'm irritable. It's one of my tell signs for okay, it might be time to take a step back and reset and get regulated. And I do that. So just briefly, I have a whole like toolkit that I have that's developed over the years. I don't remember if I brought it on an episode, a previous episode. Okay. But it's literally my coping strategies. And so it's anything from reading scripture to breathing exercises, all kinds of breathing exercises, scripture breaths, prayer, talking to a friend, seeing my counselor. Going on walks is huge for me. It's one of my biggest go-tos. And because again, like when you're in fight or flight, it's that stress hormone is being released. And so let's burn up that energy for something useful. So going for walks is what's useful for me. Getting into my hobbies is huge. So my birds are incredibly helpful. Biking, those types of things. Doing the things that I love doing, those types of are all ways. And there's more, but there's so many ways. You have to find what works for you. But again, I think it's important to know a couple of things. One is a state of anxiousness or that fight or flight response is a good thing. Like it was designed to keep us safe. So when you see a lion come charging at you, or a car that is in the wrong lane and coming toward you, your body is able, because of fight or flight, is able to react and keep you safe. That's why we have it. That's why we're designed with it. The issue becomes when we remain in that state and it begins to impact our daily lives and is chronic, is long-term, and begins to disrupt our routines in negative ways.
And it also can be triggered by simpler things like taking a test or little things like that. Like our body doesn't necessarily know the difference between a bear attack and
a math test.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's, again, part of like if your sympathetic nervous system gets activated easily, that's again when you're just in this chronic state of stress.
But I think something that just came to me, and I know we're wrapping up, but I think back, maybe it was podcast 1, we talked about just how our whole being is connected to each other. Our physical, our spiritual, our mental, they're all interrelated. And so often we want to treat one or the other. And in the spiritual community or faith community, we're very quick to want to heal the spiritual component, which is appropriate, or the physical. Somebody in the hospital bed dying of cancer or getting treatments for an illness. But when it comes to mental health, it's a little bit more neglected, can be. And so I think something that maybe we just kind of proved in this podcast was how all three are interrelated and impact one another. And so I think it's really beautiful the way God designed us. He didn't design us as compartmentalized creations, but we don't operate just as a brain. We don't operate just as a soul, and we don't operate just as a physical body. But we operate, to be human means to have all of those things working and flourishing. He designed us on this earth to be able to do that. And so there's hope, there's healing, and there's so much out there. And if you guys have questions, would love for you to just come talk to one of us or both of us. We'd be so happy to just dive in deeper with you and just kind of walk this thing out with you.
Yeah. So. Thanks for coming. We will be back with another podcast. I believe our next one is on social media.
Oh, come back for that. That's a big one, especially if you have kids, but even for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in.